So, for the first question, we will rewrite our own equation. It will be 0 equals -2 to the square root of x minus 2 to the third plus 4. Now we will rewrite this equation again. So it will be 0 equals -2 the square root x minus 2 to the third plus 4. So we add 4 to both sides. So 4 minus 4 cancels out to 0. And then 0 minus 4 equals -4. So -4 equals -2. And then x minus 2, square root of x minus 2 to the third. Now we will divide by -2 on both sides. So -2 divided by -2 cancels out, and -4 divided by -2 equals -2. Equals 2. 2 equals the square root of x minus 2 to the third. So now we would multiply the root of 3 to both sides. So this would cancel. Well, I'll write it on the other side. This cancels out the 3 and the square root. So it would be 8 equals x minus 2. It equals x minus 2, not the square root, my bad. So I would have to get rid of the square root. So it would just be 8 equals x minus 2. And now I would have to add 2 to both sides. So I'll rewrite it and I'll add 2 to both sides. So it would be 10 equals x. And that would be our final answer. But now I'll show you how we have to check our work. So I'll rewrite the equation again. 0 equals -2. The square root of 10 minus 2. So we put 10 in for x because we're checking our work. To the third plus 4. Now we have to subtract 4 to both sides. So 4 minus 4 cancels out. And then 0 minus 4 equals -4. So -4 equals -2 to the square root of 8, because 10 minus 2 equals 8 to the third. Now we would have to divide by -2. So -2 divided by -2 cancels out, and -4 divided by -2 equals +2. So +2 equals square root of 8 to the third. And now we have to get rid of the to the third in square root. So we multiply by 3. Then the 3's cancel out in the square root of 8. So now 2 to the third equals 8, and 8 equals 8. So that shows that it's the correct answer, and x equals 10. Now for question 2, we are using the same function. So it would be g of x equals -2 to the square root of x minus 2 to the third plus 4. And now our parent function would be y equals the square root of x, because we would get rid of all for this equation, we get rid of all the numbers. So negative 2, root to the third, negative 2 and 4, so it leaves us with x, the square root of x. So y equals square root of x, and it's always y equals, because it's a parent function. Now for a equals negative 2. So this equals negative 2. So now the transformation is a vertical compression, vertically compressed by a factor of 2. And this is, it's vertically compressed, first off, and it's not stretched, it's compressed because a is less than 1. And a is less than 1 because negative 2 is less than 1. So it's compressed, and it's by a factor of 2 because a equals negative 2. Now for b, for h, it equals negative 2 again because x equals minus, it's the equation x minus 2. This is horizontal shift left because it's negative by 2 because the x minus 2. So this is left again because the negative 2 is negative, obviously, and it's shifted left by 2 because h equals 2, or negative 2. Now for k is 4, so it's a vertical shift up 4, and it's up because 4 is positive. Now for question 3, we're using the equation shown, and we have to make our x points. So our x points are negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, and 3. So now we have to find our y points for these, so we have to solve the equation. So we rewrite the equation, and it would be y equals negative 3, the square root of negative 3, because it's, instead of x, we plug in our negative 3, minus 5 to the third, minus 6. Now for this, we write down negative 3, and then square root of negative 8, because negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8 to the third, minus 6. Now we would drop down the negative 3, and then negative 8 to the third, the square root of the third, equals negative 2. So we would multiply negative 3 by negative 2, and then we drop down minus 6. So negative 3 times negative 2 equals a positive 6, because negative times a negative is a positive. Then we drop down the minus 6, so 6 minus 6 equals 0. So the answer is y equals 0, and our y point is 0. Now for our next equation, where x equals negative 2, we would write y equals negative 3, the square root up to the third, and then it'd be negative 2 minus 5 to minus 6, and then we drop down negative 3, and then negative 2 minus negative 5 is negative 7, so it'd be the square root of negative 7 to the third minus 6. Then we drop down negative 3 again, and then the negative 7 to the third equals negative 1.9 and is rounded to 1.9. So we multiply these two together, and then we drop down minus 6. Then negative 3 times negative 1.9 equals a positive 5.7 rounded. And it's positive because negative times negative equals a positive. So we do 5.7 minus 6. And then 5.7 minus 6 would get us to negative 0.3. So the answer is y equals negative 0.3. So our y point here is negative 0.3. Now for our next equation, where x equals negative 1, we will rewrite it again. And it would be y equals negative 3 to the square root negative 1 minus 5 to the third minus 6. And it's negative 1 again because we replaced that for x. Then we drop down the negative 3 to the square root of negative 6, because negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6, to the third minus 6. And now we drop down negative 3. And then we multiply that with, we ultimately get 1.8 rounded, because negative 6 to the third is 1.8. Then we subtract 6. So negative 3 times 1.8 gives, it's negative 1.8, not a positive. My bad. So then it's negative 3 times negative 1.8 equals a positive 5.5. Then we subtract that from 6. So 5.5 minus 6 would get us negative 0.5. So y equals negative 0.5 as our answer. And now the y point is negative 0.5. And now for our last equation, where x equals 3, we rewrite it again. So it would be y equals negative 3 to the square root of 3 minus 5 to the third. And we put a 3 there for x because we're solving for y, and our x is 3, minus 6. Then we drop down again, negative 3, and then square root of negative 2 to the third, because 3 minus 5 is negative 2, and minus 6. Then we drop down the 3 again. Then we multiply that with negative, we would get negative 1.3, because negative 2 to the third is negative 1.3 rounded. Then we subtract 6. So then negative 3 times negative 1.3 gets us a positive 3.8 rounded. And it's positive because a negative times a negative equals positive. Then minus 6. And then 3.8 minus 6 gets us at negative 2.2. So y equals negative 2.2, and our y point is negative 2.2. So now we would plot these points down. So our first point would be negative 3, 0. So we go to negative 3, 0, plot that down. And then our next point is negative 2, negative 0.3. So we would plot that down to negative 2, then go down negative 0.3. Let me redo that, negative 0.3, just like that. And then our third point is at negative 1, negative 0.5. So we go to negative 1, and then we go down 0.5, like that. So then our last point is at 3, negative 2.2. So we go to 3, and then we go down 2.2. And we plot it right there, just like that. And now we need to graph it. So to graph it, since we see the points going down like that, we'd graph it going down, just like that. And then it says in the directions we need to find 2 turning points. So there's a turning point right at -2.3. That's because you could see that it's going down, the points. Then there's another turning point at 3, -2.2, because it is also going down. And now we need to find a domain and range. So our domain is -3 to the infinity. So we get -3 because right here, for what I circle, is a 3. Is -3. That's the highest point, so that's our domain, and it's to the infinity. And then our range is -infinity to 0. And we get 0 here because it's at -3, which is the domain. And then it sits on the line, so it's 0 because that's the y-intercept. So the range would be -infinity to 0. And thank you.